One more minor thought. Hi, I'm Brian. One more minor thought. I mentioned a lot of references, so I thought I'd write a few of them down. Say I'm a little bit slower. Some of these might be out of date. It's certainly not comprehensive. The Wikipedia page on code generators is quite good. There's some other information out there that I'll get posted, but we'll start with the granddaddy of them all, Corba, right? So Corba is not the first necessarily, but one of the biggest, what we would call an IDL language or an IDL system. So this is an intermediate data language. And Corba allows you to define objects and define services. And then it does a bunch of code generation in a bunch of different target languages and allows interchange between, systems running C++ and systems running Java across the network. Very old, but very useful infrastructure. Huge inspiration for lots of other things we would do. I didn't talk at all in the series about the web services debacle that we went through with XML and sort of the lovely set of specifications, web service star. It was XML on top of XML and specs on top of specs. And the only practical way to do it was with huge code generators. So, we designed all these specs and everybody agreed to them. And then we instantly made these massive messes of code generators. We rebelled against that, right? And then we got to JSON and we got to YAML. And particularly in the JSON space, then we said, there's got to be better ways to do remote object trading. And we're doing a lot of these HTTP APIs. We don't like XML anymore. We don't XML schemas. We do have JSON schemas, but even better, we have OpenAPI, right? So a huge ecosystem around this, right? So specification language, very similar to Corba. You can define objects in a rich object graph. You can define endpoints, services. You can define parameters, error codes, all kinds of things. Really tailored to HTTP. Lots of stuff, very, very webby stuff in here. This very much not, right? This is pretty webby. There are numerous, like probably 50 code generators that all take OpenAPI documents as their input, right? So it's a clear example of where a given structured object with a good enough schema to do interchange, right? Like again, interchange between disparate kinds of systems, right? So in these cases, multiple languages over the network, that's a great place for code generation. We see it over and over again. Internally, we code generate a bunch of Python code. We also generate a bunch of API endpoints, and then we generate TypeScript clients to go on the client side of those to make those, even easier to consume, right? So a lot of code generation in this interchange network crossing languages space, starting from kind of way back. In the Java space, from a templating language, this was my first language that I learned, Velocity. I just checked, it's still very active. This drives tons of templating across Java projects all over the Apache ecosystem. There's probably at least two more in the Java space. The really neat one in the Python space is Jinja. I think everything in the Python ecosystem uses Jinja somewhere. Python's already a fairly dynamic language, but Jinja's a really well engineered, well architected templating engine. So it's all it does is templating, and you have to build a rendering engine around it. So cookie cutter. If you've used Python, you've probably been the recipient of some cookie cutter packages, whether you realized it or not. So cookie cutter is very much a one-time snapshot, passive code generator for things like project initiation, but it's an extremely common one, right? It sits on top of Jinja. So you've got a rendering engine that sits on top of a templating engine, but it's certainly, not the only one. So there's a couple of quick references. Oh, wait, one of my favorites. So after you learn a templating language and you figure out that, this is too chatty, but you don't want to write regexes, I left this up here, right? Like DSLs and languages. If you want to go learn to make your own little mini programming languages, it is rewarding. And one of the best series of books I've read are about Antler. I believe it's on Rev 4 now. This is a phenomenal tool. So early on, right, and early on in my education, learning about code generators, I read this book and it made the assertion, oh, it's really easy if you understand the grammar of a language, to generate a parser and a lexer and all those other things and just get on about your way. But then they didn't say anything else about it. Where they did, and they said, well, there's some old Unix tools you can use. The grammars are really limited. Like, it's pretty obtuse. Antler, absolutely first class citizen. And I almost assure you that you have Antler on your computer right now. You might have multiple tools on your computer that use Antler. If you're going to develop a new programming language in multiple targets, Python, C#, Java, C++, if you're going to make a little DSL, I would strongly urge you to look at Antler, partially just because it's the coolest thing ever, but partially because it generates incredibly efficient parsers, lexers, syntax trees, has a very extensible templating engine. So if you got to get in bed with the devil, you may as well take a really good tool with you. I think that's all the main references that I usually go through in the code generating space. If I come up with others, again, maybe I'll post an update. Thank you.